Okay, in this video we're going to be talking about ice cream. And I'm not going to lie to you, this is probably the most detailed, informative video you're going to find on YouTube on the topic of ice cream. It's sort of a two-part video, and in the first part I'm going to be going over terminology, the different types of ice cream, the ingredients, and the role that they play within ice cream. And the second part of the video is the recipes. So of course you could skip to that second part, but I strongly suggest watching the first part so you know how to make it right. And I would say subscribe to the channel, but I believe I'm going to earn your subscription by the end of the video when you see how informative this video is. And you're going to see the channel provides a lot of value, and that's when you'll subscribe. So let's not waste any more time, let's get to it. Okay, getting started, the first thing I want to point out is that everything you do in the production of ice cream is based around preventing the formation of large ice crystals. From the ingredients, their ratios, how you handle them, all of it. So we'll be coming back to that a lot during this video. And the different types of ice creams. First we have French or custard style, which contains egg yolks. So that'll be a little bit more yellowish in color. And then we have American or Philadelphia style, which does not contain egg yolks. And then there's gelato, which is the Italian word for ice cream. And there's a lot of stuff out there on what the difference between gelato and ice cream is. A lot of them claim gelato doesn't have cream or it doesn't have egg yolks. That's not consistent across the board. What is consistent though is that it's more dense, meaning that it has less air incorporation during churning. And this air incorporation is referred to as overrun, and it's expressed as a percentage. And ice cream has 40 to 60% overrun, gelato has around 20% overrun. In the United States, the FDA has set the legal limit for overrun or air incorporation at 100%, meaning that the ice cream would have doubled in volume. So most of the cheaper ice creams you're buying mostly air. Okay, on to the ingredients and the roles that they play within ice cream. First we have milk, which is just under 90% water by volume and is the primary ingredient in most ice cream formulas. Now, having too much milk or not handling things properly, and you obviously run the risk of these water molecules recombining into large ice crystals. Next up, we've got cream, which the butterfat content in cream helps with air incorporation. But having too much cream and you run the risk of it churning into butter during freezing, which results in a clumpy, grainy mouthfeel. And then we've got sugar, which obviously is used as a sweetener, but it also lowers the freezing point of water. In fact, it prevents about 25% of the water from freezing altogether. And an example of frozen desserts that shows this is the difference between sorbets and granitas or granites. Granitas, they have a little bit less sugar, so they have a little bit more coarse texture when they're frozen than sorbets do. Then we have egg yolks, which help with air incorporation, but they also contain lecithin, which is a very strong emulsifier which binds water molecules to other molecules within the formula to prevent them from recombining with each other and forming large ice crystals. Egg yolks also contain protein, which helps with this as well, but I'll get back to that here in a few minutes when we're making the ice creams. Then finally we have milk powder, which is the protein replacement in American style ice cream. And you only want to use a small amount of this because the milk sugar lactose does not dissolve very well. So having too much of this and you'll have a sandy textured ice cream. Now you're probably watching this thinking that I made it sound like there's a million different things that can go wrong when making ice cream. But if you follow a few basic principles and you do them thoroughly, you're going to be okay. So let's head into the kitchen and let's make some ice cream. Okay, getting started with vanilla. Add 10 ounces of milk, 10 ounces of cream, 1/2 of a vanilla bean split down the middle, 1 tablespoon of dry milk powder, and a pinch of salt to a small sauce pot. Give it a stir with a whisk over low to medium heat, and we're going to bring this up to a simmer. So on the topic of which form of vanilla to use when making ice cream, obviously vanilla beans can be quite expensive. So alternatively, you could use vanilla extract or vanilla paste. And the ratio that's usually given to substitute these things in is 1 teaspoon equaling 1 vanilla bean. But I want to point out that the strength and potency of these things is inconsistent and varies from brand to brand and batch to batch. So I would start with 1 teaspoon and go from there. And the cool thing about these things is they don't have to be cooked into the base. So you can have the base fully chilled, add these things, taste it, and go from there. Okay, we've reached a simmer, so take it off the heat and add 4 egg yolks to a bowl along with 5 ounces of sugar and whisk this mixture together until it becomes slightly aerated and more pale in color. After about 30 seconds of whisking, you'll be able to pull the whisk out like this and create ribbons. Then begin to gradually add the preheated mixture a little bit at a time, and this is known as tempering. This is a technique used when making custards, and the slow and gradual incorporation of hot liquid while whisking controls the rise in temperature to ensure that the eggs do not become scrambled. And once the eggs are tempered, you can more rapidly add the milk and cream mixture because there will no longer be a drastic temperature difference. Okay, now we're ready to head back over to the burner, and you have to be very careful in this stage and make sure the heat is on low. The direct heat on the bottom of the pot can be a bit intense for the eggs, so low heat and constant scraping and stirring along the edges of the pot are very important here. And notice that I'm using a silicone spatula and not a wooden spoon as a lot of people suggest to do. A spatula does a much better job here, and a comparison would be trying to move water with the tip of a shovel versus using a squeegee. If the eggs are allowed to remain settled even for a few seconds, they may scramble. So the goal here is to slightly coagulate the eggs, which will thicken the mixture up, and doing this will help the egg proteins be able to bond themselves to available water molecules, which can prevent the formation of large ice crystals. Okay, this one is done and ready to be chilled overnight, so let's make some mint ice cream. So I've added the milk and cream, but this time I'm going to add a big handful of fresh mint. This is pretty much the whole package, and same as before, a tablespoon of milk powder and a pinch of salt. And we're going to be repeating the same process here. Bring the mixture to a simmer, allowing the mint to steep and become infused, and once it heats up, add 4 egg yolks along with 5 ounces of sugar to a mixing bowl, whisk it to incorporate a bit of air, then slowly temper the heated milk and cream into the egg mixture. And something you may have noticed here is that yes, I'm using both egg yolks and milk powder in these formulas, and that's because machines designed for homemade ice cream spin kind of slowly, and longer churning times can create larger ice crystals, so it's an added defense against that. So back over to the burner, and once again, low heat, constant stirring with a spatula, and you only want to lightly thicken the mixture. It should not reach a simmer and certainly shouldn't reach a boil. And if you wanted to be on the safe side of this thing, you could use a double boiler, but make sure the water in the bottom pot is not touching the mixing bowl above it. So this one is finished up now and ready to be chilled overnight. So next up we've got strawberry ice cream. So let's make a strawberry syrup base with 7.5 ounces of frozen strawberries and 1/2 of the sugar in the formula, equaling 2.5 ounces. Cook this mixture until the strawberries are softened up and they've released their juices. Then we're going to blend it together with an immersion blender. And as always, wrap plastic around the pot and the wand to prevent from making a mess. Blend this mixture until it is a smooth puree, then set it aside and let's assemble the remaining portion of our strawberry base. And for that, we'll need 2.5 ounces of milk, 10 ounces of heavy cream, 1 tablespoon of milk powder, and a pinch of salt. Whisk the whole thing together, then work in the strawberry sauce base, and just as with the other two, bring the pot to a light simmer. So you may have noticed what I have done here is I have replaced part of the milk in the recipe with strawberries. And since most fruits have about the same water content as milk, this is a great way to incorporate fruits into an ice cream base. Now the amount you swap out for varies from fruit to fruit because some fruits are more strongly flavored than others. So in the case of strawberries, I swap out 75%. But when I'm making mixed berry ice cream with these things, I swap out 50-50 because these things are a little bit more strongly flavored. And on the topic of fresh, frozen, or canned fruits, you could poach fresh fruit in a sugar syrup and incorporate that into ice cream, but I think fresh fruits are better for garnishment or some type of side accompaniment. And frozen fruits, as you see here, are great for working them into a flavor base. And canned fruits work great for cutting them into chunks. For example, you could cut peaches into chunks and use that for something like a peach cobbler ice cream. So you may have noticed in the background the process for this base was essentially the same as the other two, so this one is ready to be chilled overnight now. Okay, I've got all 3 ice cream bases in the refrigerator right now, and they have to go through an aging or a maturing period for at least 12 hours, preferably 24 hours, and there are a couple reasons for that. The first reason being that the bases are still very, very hot right now, and if you were to put them into a machine, they either would not freeze at all or they would take a very long time to freeze. And rapid freezing results in smaller ice crystals and smoother ice cream. And the second reason is that the protein in the egg yolks and the milk powder makes ionic bonds with available water molecules, so they can't recombine with each other into large ice crystals. And this maturing process allows for that to happen. So we'll check back here in a little bit. Okay, it's been 24 hours now, and I've got my ice cream machine here, and this is one of the fancier ones that has an internal compressor inside of it, meaning that it has an internal freezing unit within the machine. And most home machines are the ones that are the canisters you place into the freezer over overnight, and usually the instructions on those say to leave them in for 24 hours, but when I had one, I found that it worked a little bit better if you left it in for 2 or 3 days. And I also mentioned that rapid freezing produces better ice cream, so I've been running this thing empty for about 20 minutes now, so it's fully chilled and ready to have ice cream put into it. So I'm going to start with vanilla, and you can see that the base is thickened up overnight, so all there is to do now is to pour it into the machine, which will turn it into ice cream. And this machine usually takes between 15 and 18 minutes to complete a cycle. The canister unit I used to have took 12 minutes. So each machine is going to be a bit different on that, but know that over churning can somewhat break the emulsion and create large ice crystals. So if your ice cream comes out a bit grainy, maybe shorten up the time by a minute or two. And once the cycle is complete, scrape everything into Tupperwares, and a little trick to prevent the surface from oxidizing and turning gummy is to place a sheet of parchment over the surface of the ice cream. This one is ready to go into the freezer now, and these things take about 12 hours to fully set up in there, so I'm going to do the same thing with the other 2 ice cream bases, and after spinning the mint ice cream base, I'm going to add a handful or 2 of chocolate chips before placing it into the freezer. Okay, let's fast forward a day and plate these things up for the thumbnail, and it does help to let them sit out for a few minutes to make scooping easier. You can see that I've snuck a few bites out of this one already, but this part's pretty self-explanatory. Just place a few scoops into a bowl and gobble the whole thing up. But if you're looking for a few simple garnishing ideas, maybe place a few small mint sprigs on top of the mint ice cream, and for the strawberry ice cream, take a fresh strawberry, cut a few slices into it without going through all the way, fan it out, and place it on top. And with that, I hope you give these ice creams a try, and I hope the whole thing makes a little bit more sense to you now as well. But for now, that's the end of the video, so thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.